You're listening to the Unwritable Rant podcast with your host and bourbon-soaked storyteller, Juliette Miranda.
Hey there, y'all. I'm Juliette Miranda. This is episode 126 of the Unwritable Rant podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Studio. Studio is a lifestyle brand that makes premium headphones with studio-quality sound and classic Scandinavian design. They are the perfect combination of style and tech. Head on over to studio.com, that's SUDIO.com, to check out their incredible range of headphones. They offer free shipping around the world, and if you want 15% off your purchase, just use the code RANT during checkout. I have two stories for you today about a Crazytown vacation and scathing affirmations. But first, I am so in need of bourbon. I'm going to fill my glass up with some Eagle Rare 10-year. Cheers, y'all. Eagle Rare comes from the Buffalo Trace Distillery. It's rumored to use their mash bill number 1, which is, of course, top secret. But what we do know is that it has much less rye in it than their other mash bill. Now, I've had Eagle Rare before, and to be honest, this time around, I don't like it quite as much as I did originally. But that's kind of the fun in bourbon. What's amazing is that something as simple as changes in the weather can dramatically affect the flavor of these smaller batch releases. And don't get me wrong, this Eagle Rare bourbon is quite good. I mean, especially considering it's only $40 a bottle. Now, for me, I really find that a little bit of water and ice improves the flavor tremendously. Because when you drink this straight, right up front, you get hit with a really big oaky sort of flavor. And it's not the good oaky, it's really almost like a pungent sort of oaky. So when you add that ice, it just opens it up a little bit more. And then what I love is that it brings out a mandarin orange sort of flavor. Gives it a little bit more sweetness, kind of rounds it out, brings out a little more vanilla, so it's definitely easier to drink on the rocks. And I'll tell you, if there is ever a time when I need bourbon, it is the winter. Especially in February. I don't know what it is about this month, but winter blues just kick in with this uncanny violence. Kind of makes me stabby, more so than usual. Fortunately, there is escape on our horizon, assuming we can make it that long. My guy and I are currently in planning mode for all of our spring and summer travel, which I am incredibly excited about. But I can't ever think about spring without remembering what was easily the worst spring break vacation I have ever taken. And it wasn't with a musician, and it wasn't with some guy I was dating. It was with Crazytown. I doubt that there is any other person in the world whose memory can make me both smile and cringe in equal measure. I suppose that distance and time are just the great equalizers here, because without those blinders on, the friendship that I have with Crazytown treads dangerously on reckless on both of our parts. She and I were in college when we started fantasizing about a spring break getaway. Neither one of us was cut out for the cold, so we were whining and complaining, but I never really expected Crazytown to show up one day having bought an all-inclusive trip to Mexico for the two of us. Apparently, she got the deal from a friend who knew a travel agent. Now, this didn't surprise me. Crazytown had a connection for everything. Of course, her so-called connections were rarely reliable and somewhat shady. Which meant that one of us, and let's face it, that would usually be me, would wind up paying for her deals in various unpleasant ways. I mean, hell, I was still fending off calls from her weird mechanic friend, whom she'd led to believe that I would go out with in exchange for her new brake pads. So I had many, many questions for my loving girlfriend about this trip that she'd booked. Because for as much as I desperately wanted to get the hell out of the Midwest, I really didn't want to be doing it as part of a timeshare scam, or worse. Crazytown gave me the same look that my mother used to give me when I would turn up my nose at off-brand clothing. She looks at me and she says, "Can't you just once appreciate the cool things that I do for us?" She hands over the ticket package. And in it, I find plane tickets that are on an actual airline, not something like Bob's Mexican Charters. And we'd even be staying in a 5-star hotel chain in Playa del Carmen. As far as I could tell, everything seemed legit. Crazytown gives me a very smug, satisfied smile and says, "Pack your bags, girlie. We're going to Mexico." Had I not been so consumed with the thought of tropical sunshine and feeling the sand between my toes, I would have remembered that just going to the mall with Crazytown often required a search and rescue team. And now I had just committed myself to spending a week with her out of the country. Clearly, I was out of my mind. I will say one thing for my friend. Her travel agent, legit or otherwise, booked us a spectacular hotel. We were greeted in the sprawling open-air lobby by a lovely lady carrying a tray of piña coladas. And then we were escorted to a stunning room that overlooked the ocean. It was just enough to lull me into thinking that maybe this trip was a good idea. Now, this was an all-inclusive resort, so we really didn't have to leave. I mean, they had 5 restaurants and countless bars and pools, and a long, gorgeous stretch of beach for us to set up camp on. But not even that could contain Crazytown for long. We had barely been in our lounge chairs for an hour when Crazytown looks over at me and she announces, "I'm bored." Ugh, really? I mean, I knew the moment was inevitable. I mean, seeing as how my girlfriend had the attention span of a goldfish. I had just hoped to have a little bit more time to relax. So I sigh and I dust the sand off my feet and I say, "Well, all right, let's go find something amusing to do." Neither of us spoke Spanish with much confidence. Fortunately, I had done a little bit of reconnaissance before the trip, so I was able to instruct the cab driver to take us to 5th Avenue. This is a stretch of bars and stores and restaurants that runs parallel to the beach. Now, as far as I knew, this was the biggest source of nightlife in Playa del Carmen, which, in comparison to a place like Cancun, was something of a sleepy little town. But leave it to my damn girlfriend. Even without any party bars, she manages to lock in on the one group of shady-looking locals who are swilling tequila out of a paper bag and standing alongside a store that specializes in phone cards. It was the exact kind of situation that I'd really hoped to avoid. And I did my best. I tried to steer her away from it. I start pulling her into this really pretty, well-lit bar with Frida Kahlo reproductions, and I'm thinking, oh, please, God, just let's get a margarita. We'll be fine. But no. Crazytown saunters right up to that group of potential hoodlums, grabs the bottle, and knocks half of it back in one gulp. That was a classic Crazytown move. And I would have been impressed if I hadn't seen her practice it 20 or 30 times in front of her bathroom mirror. But it certainly had the effect that she wanted. Crazytown was quickly absorbed into the group, while I clung to the last shreds of sidewalk daylight. 5th Avenue was starting to get a little bit more lively. There was more music coming from the bars, people were dancing, and I'm thinking, please, let me just catch her attention, I'll break up the thug party, and put us on safer ground. I motion to my nutty girlfriend, who skips over to me and then relates with excitement that her new friends have invited us to a party. Because of course they have. Apparently, one of them lived nearby, and this is Crazytown's big selling point. Oh, it's right down the road. It's walking distance. Sure, because we can't be robbed and gang raped if we're walking. But walking is exactly what I have to do. Because Crazytown is already prancing after these guys, and they're motioning us to follow them right around the corner and off the safety of the shopping strip. And goddammit, I had to follow her. I couldn't just let Crazytown wander off into the wilds of Mexico alone. And as we stumble over chunks of gravel in our flip-flops, she grabs my hand and she says, "This is the real Mexico, not some silly hotel." To her, the so-called real Mexico was a magnificent stretch of the unknown. Her rosy eyes saw palm trees and humble little houses, while my, admittedly jaded vision took in the bars on the windows and a rather angry-looking rooster that was trailing behind our group. The 5 or 6 guys ahead of us stop at a very dim, crumbling house on a corner. 2 guys disappear inside, presumably to get more booze, and they leave us in the yard. There are empty beer cans in the low bushes, lots of broken glass, and the grimy remains of what had once been a fountain. Its main function now seemed to be that of a makeshift urinal, which I only knew because I caught one of our escorts peeing into it. Crazytown is eyeing this situation with a wacky grin on her face, as if this is exactly the taste of local culture that she's been craving. And who knows, maybe it could have been. But the second I heard a woman screaming from inside the house, I was not inclined to stay and find out. I grab Crazytown and quickly drag her off in the direction where we'd come from. And she's yelling at me, "What is your fucking problem? Why do you have to ruin all of our fun? You don't know what that woman was saying." My Spanish may not have been great, but it did not take an expert translator to know that those were not words of welcome. Crazytown was silent for the entire cab ride back to the hotel. I understood that she was pissed off at me, but I'd hoped that, I could entice her with a few margaritas back at the beach bar. Instead, she promptly ditched me, picked up a guy, and then took him back to our room for a spite fuck. The move was less about her having sex and more about inconveniencing me with it. And as such, I wound up spending the night being eaten alive by sand fleas as I lounged in a chair on the beach. Around 6 a.m., I went back to our room. The door was unlocked and Crazytown was alone and sound asleep. Her long blonde hair was splashed over the pillow, and for a moment, I had to fight the urge to grab it in my fist and pull. I seriously hated her when she got vindictive. I really did. It was never my intention to ruin our night. I didn't want to deny her of fun. But for the love of God, if she had a single shred of common sense, she would have seen that those guys were not interested in a party. At least not the kind that she had in mind. Resentment is just bubbling in the back of my throat like a bad shot of tequila. Who the hell did she think she was? Crazytown did not have the in on all of the fun in Mexico. And that's when I realized I could have just as much fucking fun as my nutcase girlfriend, and without getting robbed, stabbed, or violated in the process. So I grabbed my bikini and I stomped out of the room without leaving a note. Let that crazy bitch find me for a change. It was around noon when Crazytown caught up with me. I was working a very exuberant drunk, and I had sweet-talked the sexy bartender into letting me behind the pool bar so he could teach me how to twirl bottles. I was doing my best Tom Cruise and cocktail impression when I see Crazytown approach the bar. And I had quite an audience. It was rather spectacular. And she could have sat down. She could have applauded with the rest of the group and then joined me for a drink, and that would have been fine. Great, even. But Crazytown was not the kind of girl who got over grudges easily. Instead, she whips around and marches right over to the pool where she flings off her bikini top, climbs to the top of a slide shaped like a pyramid, and then executes a perfect dive into the deep end. All right. So that's how she's going to play it. Fine. I'd see her topless dive and raise her a mock pole dance. And that was exactly how we spent the next 2 days. We didn't say a goddamn word to each other. We just went out of our way to one-up the other in wild displays of supposed fun around the resort. When she saw me holding a sing-along during beach karaoke night, she counters by leading everyone at the pool in a Macarena dance-off. When I saw her riding the waves in an inner tube with a group of college guys, I hijacked a jet ski and attempted to drown her with a back spray. But despite all appearances, I really wasn't having that good of a time. Honestly, it was exhausting trying to find new and excessive ways to have fun. Plus, I was lonely. For as much trouble as Crazytown was, I missed her company. And she must have felt the same way because later that night at the bar, she approaches me with the fixings for a tequila body shot. She looks a little sheepish when she asks me if it's okay. I nod. She licks, shoots, then sucks the lime from my mouth in a seamless, ridiculously graceful move. All eyes are on us, and I'm about to order a shot of my own when she stops me and says, "I hate fighting with you." That was about as close to an apology as I have ever heard from her. By that point in our friendship, Crazytown and I were constantly bickering over something, but our disagreements usually dissolved without conversation. Her acknowledging our little feud kind of took me by surprise because I always just assumed she took our friendship for granted. But she keeps talking, and she says, "Look, we only have 2 days left here, and I really, really want to spend them with you." So she reveals that she has booked an excursion to the Mayan pyramids in Tulum for us. And before I can even ask, she's doing her best to prove that this is totally legitimate. She's like, "Look, I booked it through the hotel. It's fine, I promise. We'll be with a whole group of people." And then she delivers her 6 favorite words. "I promise, nothing crazy will happen." And I believed her. I did. I always just caved when it came to Crazytown, and to this day I really don't know why. She really was one of the most thoughtless, careless, insane people on the planet. But in a weird sort of way, I admired her wild abandon. She was fun. So we spent the rest of that night doing tequila shots and dancing on the bar like a couple of adorable maniacs. And the next day at 9 a.m., we joined our little tour group in the lobby to be bussed off to the Mayan ruins. I am not normally someone who enjoys traipsing through the jungle, particularly not when I am hungover. But I had to admit it was pretty spectacular to be able to explore a leftover city from the 13th century. Even Crazytown seemed to be enjoying the experience, mostly because there was an attractive guy peddling water bottles at the site that she could flirt with. I didn't really think too much of it. After all, she had promised me that she would suck back the crazy. And really, how far could she get with a water bottle guy? And the answer to that dumb question? Far enough. I don't know how that girl did it, but one minute Crazytown and I are exploring the cold, dark passages of a Mayan temple, and the next thing I know, I am walking out solo. So I start looking around, and I have no idea where Crazytown has gone. And of course, big shocker, the water bottle guy is gone too. I start to panic. We are in the middle of the jungle in Mexico. My girlfriend is gone, and I see that our tour guide is giving our group the wrap it up signal. My idiot friend is likely having sex on an altar somewhere, completely oblivious to the fact that this bus is about to leave without her. Now, normally, I would have run up to the guide and had him halt the exodus until Crazytown turned up in whatever compromising but oh so charming position she was likely in. But I was just sick of being her savior. And I was disgusted because clearly that little apology routine that she'd done the night before had been complete bullshit. I think, you know what? Fuck her. She's a big girl. Let her deal with the consequences. And then I stomp right onto that bus as if that was how I'd arrived, and I allowed it to drive off minus one person. I watched those Mayan pyramids vanish into the background, and for 3 minutes, I felt the best kind of smug satisfaction there is. It would serve her right if she got stuck there at the ruins. And then it was at that very moment when I realized the magnitude of what I had just done. I had deliberately left my friends stranded on the Yucatan Peninsula, a good hour from our hotel, and with no way of getting back. Hell, I didn't even know if she'd brought her wallet with her. Lord, did I feel like an asshole. So I'm just about to call out to the tour guide and the bus driver and beg them to turn around, when I look out the back bus window. There, riding on the handlebars of the water bottle guy's bike, is Crazytown. She waves up at me as the bike passes the bus at a stop sign. I wave back. I had to. I didn't know how or when she'd make it back to the hotel that day. But I'll tell you, I had a feeling she would be just fine. And now I need more bourbon. Hang on, y'all. Bourbon. So, y'all, I'm wearing these new headphones, the Studio Regent on-ear headphones. And I'm going to tell you, I'm a total princess when it comes to headphones. I find most on-ear headphones to be really bulky and awkward, and they don't fit well, and they're uncomfortable. But these Studio headphones, they're amazing. Even I, a non-technical person, realize this. They are incredibly crisp and clear. But here's what I love about them. They're beautiful. Now, I'm wearing the black marble design, but they also come in white, and both are just so cool. And compact, too. You can actually fold these up and then tuck them in a bag, which means I'm totally going to be traveling with these things, too. And of course, they are Bluetooth enabled, so you can wear them wireless, and that means I'm not going to be tethered to my phone or my laptop ever again, and this is just joyous. So y'all, if you want to check out the headphones from Studio, head on over to sudio.com. That's SUDIO.com. And if you want 15% off your order, enter in the code RANT at checkout. So in thinking about it, I realized that deciding to leave the country with Crazytown probably wasn't exactly the best judgment. And that's the problem, because I would like to be able to say that my judgment has improved over time. But even into my 30s, I was doing questionable things. Like that time I decided to volunteer for a mentoring program. Oh yeah, I did this. And I definitely did not do it for the right reasons. At least, not initially. I originally signed up to be a mentor to impress the guy that I was dating. The most complimentary thing that I can call this guy today would be the collector. He was one of my non-musician dating experiments, and definitely not a good one. He had a very high-profile job in Chicago, and he liked to use his excess wealth to buy pretty plaques and trophies to demonstrate just how charitable he was. And he treated his assortment of friends and girlfriends in much the same way. We all just sort of existed in his life to make him look better. I kind of suspect that he only kept me around so that he could check off the charity case space on his relationship bingo card. He only visited my apartment once, proclaimed it adorably compact, and then insisted we only spend time in his condo in the city. Whenever we would go out, he would frequently remind me just how lucky I was to be learning from his company. Now, if I am completely honest with y'all, I will say that I only kept him around for the fancy dinners and charity balls. Still, and I don't know why, but I felt the need to somehow prove myself to him. And that was why I announced one day that I would be volunteering 1 day a week to mentor 7th grade girls at a local school. Now, the collector wasn't nearly as enthusiastic as I had expected. It would seem that to him, the only real way to make a difference was through money. Getting hands-on, and that's what he called it, hands-on, was for peasants, apparently. But he did give me a very condescending pat on the head and said, "Oh, but this is a great start, baby." I was enraged, but mostly at myself for, 1, even getting involved with this asshole in the first place, and 2, for being so impulsively desperate to impress him that I actually committed to a volunteer program. I considered quitting. I really did. I genuinely did not believe that I was even remotely suitable to mentor anyone. I mean, look at me. I hate children. I swill bourbon like some kind of farm animal. And Lord knows I have a problem with authority. But then I started to think about it a little bit more. These weren't kids. They were 7th grade girls. And if there is one thing that I could have used during my horrible, torturous 7th grade year, it would have been someone like me. Oh, I wasn't entirely convinced that that was a good thing for anyone, but I decided I was going to give this whole mentoring thing a shot. really, how much damage could I do? The program itself was very similar to your standard big sister type thing. Only because there was a shortage of volunteers, I would be assigned a group of 4 girls to mentor instead of just 1. So every Thursday, I had to check in at the local grade school and hang out with my girls from 2:30 to 5. The whole thing felt incredibly surreal, especially when I arrived at the school for the first session. I had pretty much written off grade schools after leaving my own nearly 2 decades prior. And it was weird because the school looked almost identical to mine. Same ugly painted brick walls, rows of lockers, and of course the half-ass posters promoting school spirit and banishing drugs. But what really unnerved me was the smell. It was musky and slightly damp, and it just had that cloying stink of cherry lip gloss. And if that wasn't enough to take me back to the horrors of my own middle school, meeting the other mentors was. They were all clustered around a lunch table, all of them polished and sprayed and the absolute picture of suburban perfection. I'm sure they all came from identical houses and had matching minivans lined up in the parking lot. Whereas I had just left what was essentially my sugar daddy's condo in my sagging Chevy with a broken speedometer. I stumbled into that lunchroom the Lita Ford to their Marie Osmond. But oh, were they polite. They were so polite it made my teeth sting. First, the backhanded compliments dropped. Then came the very unnecessary reminders of all of the things that I couldn't do, including give the girls money, drugs, or snacks involving peanut butter. Then, the leader of this Stepford Brigade drops the bomb. She informs me that they have already matched up the girls with the mentors who they think would best suit their personalities. And as she says this, one of the other mentors tries to suppress a giggle. So I ask for a little bit of clarification. What exactly does that mean? And again, there's that seething politeness. The leader is very quick to point out that my girls are not troublemakers. Oh, no, they're definitely good girls. They just have a little trouble fitting in. All of the girls begin trooping into the lunchroom then, and I don't even have to ask who my charges are. It's obvious. They're the ones hovering just outside of the group, the ones who look just the slightest bit disheveled, and they are the ones who clearly do not want to be there. I hated to admit it, but we were a perfect match. So the leader puts on her little song and dance routine then for the group. She stands up in front of everybody and starts dropping all sorts of fancy buzzwords about strength and leadership and friendship. But you can tell that she never really means a word of what she's saying. She just likes the sound of her own voice. All of the other mentors are lined up next to her, so she starts introducing us. She saves me for last and calls me Julie, as she rushes past my background as though I am the one mutt at a pedigree dog show. Not that I had ever wondered, but it was suddenly very clear to me what became of all of the snotty girls I had worked so hard to avoid in my own middle school. We get grouped up with all of our girls next, and the Stepford leader suggests that we all form a trust circle where we can get to know each other better. No, I don't think that's going to work for me. My 4 girls eye me very suspiciously as I usher us past the circle of false trust, and I settle us on the floor under a large window overlooking the athletic field. Believe me, it occurred to me that I should play nice with the other mentors and not so obviously dismiss the rest of the group. But I don't like groups. I don't like empty words, and I definitely don't like having my name not so accidentally mispronounced. So as we get situated, I look at the girls in front of me and I ask, "So, what'd y'all do to get forced into this?" It was the perfect icebreaker. As I suspected, all 4 girls had been roped into attending this mentoring program by their school counselor. She had positioned it to their parents as being something that would help them learn to socialize better. Uh-oh. They certainly weren't going to learn how to socialize from me. As it was, I had zero clue how to actually be a mentor. So, for the next 6 weeks, I mostly just listened. The girls talked about themselves and about school and friends, and eventually, they told me about a bully. Her name was Samantha, and she too was a part of the mentor program. It wasn't hard to figure out who she was. She was the girl who would hold court at the center of the stupid trust circle. She was also the same little charmer who asked me if I rode a motorcycle and referred to my little group of deliberate outcasts as the witches. She was your typical girl nightmare in every respect. One day, I came into the lunchroom early, and I found one of my girls sitting in a chair and crying her eyes out. Samantha had apparently started a very nasty rumor about her, and she was afraid that her few friends would turn against her because of it. I had been on the same end of very similar rumors at that age, and I gotta say, it really broke the lump of coal I call a heart right in half to see how hurt this girl was. My initial inclination was to go bad Santa on the demon Samantha when she showed up in the lunchroom, but even I knew that would be wrong. Instead, I attempted to do the mature thing and discuss the situation with the other mentors. And I really should have known better. Since we started, the women had only been mildly cordial toward me. And even then, it was only when reporters from the local paper were around. It was very clear that their involvement in this mentor group was no different than my collector boyfriend's charitable donations. They just wanted the credit. My suggestion of discussing bullying in the trust circle was dismissed with a head pat. Oh, they commended me on my passion, but they felt the subject was too somber for the group. Our charming little Stepford leader, however, did have one bit of advice for me. She says, "You know, as a mentor, it's your responsibility to explain to your girls that they wouldn't have a problem with bullying if they just made an effort to fit in." Right. I look at that woman, and I know full well that she is the exact adult embodiment of a bully. Oh, sure, she covers it with perfect hair and tight-lipped smiles, but there was very little difference between her and Samantha. I may not have been the ideal mentor, but if there was anything I could show those girls, it wasn't going to be how to fit in. It was going to be how to stand up for yourself. So that afternoon, I grouped my girls together and I had a little chat with them. I explained that sometimes people just suck, and the only thing you have any control over is how you respond to it. And then I unfurled a plan to help those girls take control and make a point. Our final session was coming up in 2 weeks, and our Stepford leader had suggested that we mark the occasion with a tea party. Each mentor and her group would be responsible for managing a certain aspect of the party, in an effort to teach everyone teamwork. One group would be handling decorations, another would do the tea, and I volunteered my group to make cookies. Because if there is one thing I know, it's the power of cookies. And these weren't going to be your everyday cookies. Oh no. These were going to be fortune cookies. I gave my girls a little homework assignment. I had them write the fortunes that would go in every cookie. Actually, they weren't really so much fortunes as they were affirmations. And the plan was to have every girl stand up and read her affirmation at the tea party. Demonstrate the power of words. Oh, I was so proud of my girls. They really got into the spirit of the project. And that tea party was glorious. One by one, each girl cracked into her cookie and recited poignant truths, such as, "Fitting in is optional." Another girl said, "I am awesome just the way I am." And then, of course, there was Samantha's affirmation. "Beauty is as beauty does." She wasn't especially excited to read that aloud, but her embarrassment didn't even begin to compare to that of the mentors. Each woman broke into her cookie, and watching their faces simultaneously drain of color was exactly what I had hoped for. And as each woman tried to casually crumple up her affirmation into a tiny ball and stuff it under a teacup, I couldn't help but smile. They got the point. I hadn't told my girls about the special messages for the mentors, mostly because I wanted them to have plausible deniability in case there was trouble. But as I was saying goodbye to them after the party, they begged me to tell them what I'd written. I figured what the hell. They needed to know. So I said, "Girls, each mentor had the same note." It said, "Makeup only fixes your outside. Your insides need a little more work." I went home that afternoon and I told my boyfriend I had better things to do than be a part of his collection. And that was the second best decision I had made that day. The first was signing up for another round of mentoring in the fall. And now, another good decision. Bourbon. Oh, y'all, I think you've heard enough out of me. But I do have good news for you. We have launched the Unwritable Rant merch store. We have men's and women's t-shirts, a very cool coffee mug, and coming in less than a month, the Unwritable Rant flasks. I will be sure to let y'all know as soon as those flasks are available, but until then, you can check out all of our cool other stuff. Just head on over to theunwritablерant.com. And now I'm out. Hope y'all have a great week. Thank you so much for listening. I will be back next Sunday to share some more bourbon-soaked stories with you. Cheers, y'all.
Go to theunwritablerant.com and sign up to get early access to interviews and new videos. And don't forget to connect with Juliette on Twitter @MorningNeurosis.
Girl, you was pretty as a Sunday morning, standing on the corner at Carondelet. What you say we make our way up to Bourbon, a couple hurricanes and a hand grenade, and get blown away. Let the chips fall where they may. If it's all the same, what you say, bon ton, hey, pretty mama, I can smell the gumbo. Sweetest taste of honeysuckle on my lips. Good God Almighty, I can hear the trombone. Every heart ought to beat to a rhythm like this. Come a little closer, honey, let me hold you. Nothing tastes better than a bourbon kiss. You can be the flower on my magnolia. Every heart ought to beat to a rhythm.